Hi, I'm Miles. Welcome to the Crippled Podcast. We both recently read some books, and we like to talk about them. My book was The Thunderhead by Neil Shutterman. It's a pretty good book, and it's the sequel to the book Scythe that was actually a group project. And I think Mason could talk about what he thinks or introduce himself.
So, I'm Mason. I read The Hunger Games, and I thought it was a pretty interesting book. Something that I'm excited for our podcast to focus on is probably the compare and contrast part. I like comparing and contrasting my books with other people's just to get a feel for like if I'd like their book or not. So, some background on The Hunger Games. It takes place in a country called Panem, which is basically like this dystopian place after the United States was destroyed. It includes 12 districts. There used to be a 13th, but that one got destroyed. So there's 12 districts, and they're like all poor. And then there's this one supreme place called the capital, where all the rich people live, and it's like just a powerful city that can control anything. Something about what the Hunger Games are is like each district. So since there's 12 districts, there's gonna be 12 boys and 12 girls. Each district sends one boy and one girl. So that's 2 people per district. There's 24 people in the Hunger Games, and only one person can survive.
Pretty cool. My book was similar to Thunderhead. It's the sequel to the book Scythe. And in the book, they live in a perfect utopia where they can have whatever they want, including revival. The problem about revival in any other book or possible idea is that they just run out of space and food for other people. But luckily, they can have whatever they want, so the food isn't a problem. The space is a problem. So with too many people, then overpopulation, the government sent out scythes to glean people, which is their version of killing people. When someone's gleaned, they cannot be revived. But like a scythe could not glean another scythe. The only way for a body to not be revived would be if it got like burnt or eaten or something. You might have to know a bit about the first book, but not too much to understand what's going on in the second book. Basically, the main characters, Aron and Citra, they one of them is only allowed to make it into scythehood, and one of them isn't because Faraday, which is the mentor for both of them, is not supposed to actually be teaching 2 people. He's only supposed to be teaching 1, which caused very, very big controversy in the site though.
So another thing I want to hit about my book is some of the main characters. There's 2 of the main characters that I want to focus on. One is named Katniss Everdeen. She is the girl from District 12 that goes to fight in the Hunger Games. There's another boy from District 12. His name is Peeta Mellark. He also goes to fight in the Hunger Games. And basically, just the central problem of my book is basically the government is like just controlling everyone and has all this power. What about your book? Like, what are some of your central powers and your main characters?
So the Thunderhead is actually the form of government. They control everything that happens except for in the Scythe Thumb. So they can track where anybody is. They can see everything. They can hear everything. They have cameras in every location. Everybody's allowed to access this information, so it's all public information. The only people that cannot access it are the sites. So they actually can hire people to go and like third-party man-in-the-middle missions on them.
So now that you're done talking about your main characters and central conflicts, I'd really love to know about your narrative elements such as themes, character setting, writing style, or point of view.
Point of view. That sounds interesting. Just like the way that my author does it is that he switches POVs in between the chapters constantly. So in part of the chapter, you'll be hearing about Citra and how she's with somebody else doing something in whatever they're doing, and then it'll switch to a different character like Rowan, who is just killing people. So it can go from drinking to a cup of tea to ripping someone's left toe off in 4 words, which it's sometimes fun, but it's also sometimes kind of awkward.
Do you have any quotes that would like describe your point of view?
Yeah, actually, I do have a few quotes. In the book, it says, I see everything yet forbidden to act. This is from the perspective of the Thunderhead, because they don't have any way that they're allowed to contact the Thunderhead at all. To go along with this, I also got another quote that says, the Thunderhead could guide humanity, but humanity still has to choose, because the Thunderhead's not just gonna tell everybody exactly what to do, because that would just be way too boring. Do you have any quotes, Mason?
So, first I just want to talk about my point of view real quick. My point of view is honestly nothing like yours. Mine's just written in first person, and it's like, it doesn't swap between characters. It always stays in Katniss's perspective. So, one quote is, I volunteer as a tribute, which is from her when her sister got choose to go to the Hunger Games. But she ended up volunteering because she didn't want her sister to die. Because she's like 16 and her sister is 12. And another quote is, I try to think of happy memories. And those are just her first person quotes and kind of what our perspective is on. What other narrative elements stood out to you?
The setting that I had in mind was very interesting. But like, the setting of my book was a lot more interesting because it was a lot more descriptive. As the Thunderhead, as a quote would display, the world had conquered diseases, hungers, and even death, but not human nature, which just describes the interesting and complex life of humans. How dulled down it got by the Thunderhead. Another quote from the book. The Thunderhead watched everything, guided everything, and could not interfere when the Scythe was concerned. And this is what made the entire book just more interesting. Because if the Scythe had full access to the Thunderhead, it would have been boring. Mason, what about the setting of your book?
So the setting of my book.
I don't care.
So the setting of my book mostly takes place in District 12. It does swap between a few places. So it starts out in District 12. Then it goes to the train, and then it goes to the Capitol. The Capitol's where the people go for the Hunger Games. And then, obviously, it goes to the Hunger Games arena. There's different, there's the training arena and stuff like that. So, one quote I have is about the District 12 property. It says, District 12, where you can starve to death in safety. That just shows how poor District 12 is compared to all the other districts. Another one is about the black market in District 12. And it says, the Hob, the black market where we can buy almost anything. So you could just basically go there and ask for anything you want, and you'll probably get it, as long as you have either money or you have an item to trade in.
So, who would be supplying the food? Do you know that?
So there's this thing called the Hob, and basically who supplies the items there are local people from District 12, including hunters and foragers. So people like Katniss, the main character, and her friend named Gale. They hunt illegally outside the district fence. And then they bring back things like squirrels, rabbits. They bring back fish and some plants to trade. There's some workers who steal small amounts from their jobs. So like the coal miners or the other workers, they sometimes secretly take stuff from their work. And then the traders and merchants, they barter food, cloth, and medicine or tools that they have access to. And then travelers between districts, which rarely happens, is they just kind of, there's other items from different districts, and then they just kind of show up in the trade.
I guess that can bring us to our next topic, which is about the pros and cons of the book. I'll go first because I do definitely have some very obvious pros and cons. I really like about this book. I think it's really interesting that it's in the eyes of the Thunderhead and not individual characters like the last book. Is because the Thunderhead, it knows exactly what everybody is thinking, which I don't know how that would work. I don't know how that ties into it. It could be a loophole, or I'm just forgetting something because I read the book a few weeks ago. But the only thing I don't like about it is that it switches characters in between, the paragraphs, which makes you lose where you're at in the book. I definitely do think that they could improve on that. Maybe have some sort of special, divider. I feel like maybe more immersed or something. That would be pretty interesting. For people that I'd recommend this book to, it'd be people that have around an 8th grade to 9th grade reading level. 7th grade if you want to, go a bit ahead,
Yeah, push yourself.
If you want to push yourself a bit harder, trying to get up there. Because it's a 500-page book, plus the book before it is around 400, and the next book's around 800 pages. So So it's a very, very big series.
How many books are there in the series?
There is a total of 4, and I'm pretty sure there's another one, but it's not like directly in the
It's like a
timeline.
prequel or sequel?
It's like different quotes from like their logbook. Every site takes notes, and that's public to everybody.
Oh, okay.
So I heard about it. I heard it's like 3.3 out of 5 stars. People don't really like it compared to the rest of the books, but that's what I'm thinking. But I would recommend this to people that like changing topics really quickly. If you are somebody that can quickly change from one topic to another, I'd recommend this book. It's also very descriptive, and there's lots of characters, so it takes a bit more brain power than this guy. Anyways, what do you think about your book?
What I think the author does well is like descriptions of the characters and stuff like that, or like descriptions of the setting. One thing I think that the author could change is like kind of the plot. Like is like sometimes it goes slow, sometimes it goes really fast, and it just kind of flaps between it. I kind of like a steady plot, something that's like it could go really fast or it could go really slow, but like I just don't like how it constantly changed. And I would recommend this book to people who like dystopian survival, people like maybe hunting. It's only like 300 pages and it's not that hard of a book, and I still thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, something that just reminded me of, when you're talking about slow and like quick between the speeds of the book, does that mean like at one point in the book it would be like an entire chapter on like an hour of a day, and the next chapter it would be over the span of like a week or a month or something? Is that what you mean?
Kind of like that. Yeah.
We did some research, to challenge ourselves a bit. So I researched about, this is kind of silly, but I researched about the privacy like laws, because I was thinking that I wouldn't really want to be spied on by the Thunderhead and everybody is allowed to see it. I think that's kind of creepy. But so I did some research. So it can lead imprisonment for up to 5 years if the misdemeanor. But you can also get like probation and restraining orders, and it's around 5,000 per violations. But after researching all this and thinking about it, I realized that well, actually, another thing is that government and law enforcement is allowed to break this act if they have good reason of someone doing something illegal. But I also found something that made this entire research just stupid. Is that the Thunderhead is the form of government, so they could do whatever they want and no one could stop them.
Oh, so it's kind of like when, I don't know if you remember when you guys learned this, but it's when like kind of the USA went into like Japan and they just didn't have to follow rules. Same with like the British when they went into China, they didn't have to follow any rules. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah, kind of like we have our amendments, and they basically exact opposite of that. I also researched about the Utopia, because that was just making all the research kind of confusing, because like would people be imprisoned because people were being punished, they were being marked as this thing called unsavory, which means they weren't allowed to communicate to other people like easily. If they wanted to talk to a regular person, it's very difficult. It gives them a big U basically on their name badge that they have, that marks them unsavory and to be like watched out for, because one of the characters got marked as an unsavory on accident, so he wasn't supposed to. He was just a normal person because he was illegally helping a scythe with talk to the Thunderhead when they were supposed to have a license for it. But the thing about a utopia is that the way that Griffin, which is the person who wrote this very descriptive article, they said that utopia isn't like the end goal of the society, it's the progress to the end goal, which I thought was actually made a lot more sense, because it said, but not exactly quoting it, this is just what I have down in my notes, that utopia, things can still go wrong. For example, 100 years ago, it would be more dystopian than today. And if you were born then and time traveled to today would look like a perfect utopia at a glance. But it's really not a utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the was yourself.
So I decided to research about propaganda and political control. So I got my resources from like Britannica, and so basically, first thing I want to talk about is what is propaganda. Propaganda is created to make one side look bad or persuade others to change their opinions. So like this happens with a lot of countries when they go to war. They try and make other countries look bad, so they side with their country. So there's two types of propaganda that I wanted to focus on. One is democratic propaganda. That's kind of a hard word to pronounce sometimes. I don't know why. So, and okay, so in an ideal democracy, everyone would be free to make propaganda and free to oppose propaganda. That's what the democratic control of propaganda is. Basically, anyone can create it, anyone can deny it. Then there's the second one called authoritarian control of propaganda, and this is basically trying to regime. The regime tries to monopolize for itself all opportunities to engage propaganda, and it will stop at nothing to crush any kind of counter propaganda. So basically, it's just like propaganda that crushes other things that try and make them look bad.
So it'd be more like government propaganda, where they wouldn't be able to like deny it, be like forced upon them to agree with it, kind of like what's happening in North Korea, where they're all saying that Kim Jong-un has to be, he's like the perfect person on Earth, and they're the best country, when they're in reality they're a very weak and very poor country.
I mean, they're not really weak.
They are very weak.
They are.
Yeah, like over 75% of their population is currently starving because taxes and inflation are so high, because they still have a social hierarchy. They still have peasants and they still have rich people at the top. And Kim Jong-un's just basically sitting on top of the entire pyramid.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just like they make propaganda to make other people look bad, and then if someone creates counter propaganda, they just like destroy it. So
I think that just about wraps it up.
I mean, what are your final thoughts on the book?
I mean, I think the book it's a good book. The idea is great, but I just feel like there's just so many loose ends that just break the flow of it. I can't really say them all because that'd spoil the book for anybody that'd be reading it, because it's kind of, especially in the first and second book, at the end of it, it just defrays from the balance that they have of keeping it fictional, but still tying things in, because it's on Earth in the future. I mean, I'd recommend the book again, just to people that have an early high school freshman to somewhere around their level. Because it's a long read, and some people would probably definitely get discouraged seeing a 500-page book,
Or like bored
yeah.
at some point.
Yeah, I started reading the book at one point. I got to page 150, and I was just kind of bored, and then I stopped and I picked it up again. So, I definitely think that it could be improved, but if they tried improving it too hard, they'd probably make it worse. Anyways, what's your thought on?
My final thoughts on the book: it was just a great book. I really like survival and dystopian type of books like that, and I just like the way about some of their deaths were really cinematic. I know that sounds weird because making dying sound cool. I mean, it's not cool, but I'd recommend this to anywhere from 7th grade, maybe 6th grade, so the middle school level, up to your sophomore year, which is 10th grade.
Well, anyways, I'll say that brings us to the end of our podcast. But personally, if you haven't been listening, I'd recommend to read the book if you're at early freshman level to high school, and to Justin Sleeper. Anyways, Mason, do you have any final words?
So my final thoughts on my book.
I said final words.
No, I have to do my final thoughts.
Bye.
So basically, my final thoughts on the book were it was just a really good book overall, and I would Again, I'd recommend it to like maybe 6th to 7th grade level, and then up to like 10th grade. I mean, and if you haven't read it and you're like above the 10th grade level, go ahead and read it. It's a really good book. And I think overall the story reminds us that courage and hope can exist even in the darkest situation. That'll do it.
Love's gonna get you killed. The price gonna be the death of you and you and me and you.